Much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Samat Galimov. I'm a Chief Technology Officer at Meduza. I think my talk will be like 20 minutes, and then we'll have 10 minutes for Q&A. Sorry, Dmitry is a little bit late. He'll be here for Q&A session for sure. So, what is Meduza? It's a news media launched 3 years ago in Riga. Editorial stuff is mostly from Lenta, but the development stuff is a new team. We have like 40 editors at the moment and 10 developers. One of these 10 is an operations engineer dedicated to managing our servers. We'll have like a few dozens. User-wise, it's 50 million page views per month. It's like 7-8 million unique visitors each month and 200 terabyte traffic. I say about traffic because we handle this traffic ourselves. I mean, we have our own little CDN, which serves all the traffic for Meduza. That's done because of the price issues. I mean, serving your traffic yourself is usually much more cheaper than serving it through a commercial CDN. Our main product is website, Android and iOS apps, instant articles, RSS feeds, and the news editor, which is used by the editorial team. So it is a lot of products, like a desktop app and iOS and Android apps on both mobile and tablet, some apps for watches, both on Android and iOS, but I will not speak about these products today, because all these products are quite stable. They don't change much over time. I mean, they change, the code changes, but the delivery mechanism and the number of apps is quite stable over time. Another part of Meduza are games. It is a small interactive blocks of content, which is either embedded into the HTML page via iframe, most usually, or presented via WebView on a mobile apps. It is usually connected to some newsworthy event. So let me give you some examples. We started with tests, quizzes, as you call them. They don't look very impressive today, but they were a big thing like 3 years ago, when you had just text images, and then boom, you had the interactive game, interactive quiz where you can answer questions and see results. Then it got a little more complicated. You see, it's essentially the same quiz, but with images and pick one questions. And then we started doing things like this, where you need to build a map of Russia yourself. It will say how close is it to the real map. And then we got games like this, which is Plants vs. Zombies makeover, regarding the late event where a park in center of Moscow were vandalized by people, so you need to defend the park and click on person stealing some plants. So, or maybe it's our super hit is Mr. Putin being late everywhere. There were a funny event when Mr. Putin was late to the Roman Pope. So here he is a Super Mario, and he needs to go to the Pope in 60 seconds. So business side is that these games, we call them all of these projects games, although not all of them are games, should be developed like in 1 day or 3 days, 2 weeks max, because it's a newsworthy event, and in 2 weeks nobody will remember about this newsworthy event. We have like 5 projects a month. In a hot month, we might have even 10. We already need to support more than 100 of them. And it is one dedicated developer versus slash manager. He manages outside contractors, 5 of them. So this is a business side. Technically, each interactive project / game is a separate repository with a node.js big backend and HTML5 frontend. It's a standard mixture of NPM, ES6, linters, etc., etc. It rarely have database. We usually prefer Postgres, and it has Nginx as a proxy reverse proxy, which routes the traffic to the right place, to the right game. So operation requirements for these projects are usually, first we need automated deployments, because these games are being developed that fast. We need to iterate very quickly. So developer writes a code and then designer needs to see it exactly that moment. So it's not like push, wait, deploy, wait, and then see the results. It should be push, see the result. Logging deployments and failures to a Slack channel. We'd like to see when, we'd like to automate that after the deploy is successful, designer and a product manager should see it and should be able to see the changes instantly. It should be easily redeployable in case of the hardware failures. We had a situation where the main machine hosting all these games went out, and we need to redeploy all like 80 games at the moment to get them back up. So doing it manually will take a lot of time. And it should have a reasonable installation time, so setting up a new project shouldn't be a long process. So version 1 of our solution was using the existing infrastructure. We already have like 20 tier 1 apps, we call them. It is like the RSS server, the website, all these stable things. We manage them through Ansible. So we just started putting all these games into the Ansible configuration file. And we built an application, we called it Builder. It is a really small Golang application which listens for a webhook and then rebuilds Git pulls the repository needed and then builds it and restarts the service. It worked. Funny enough, it worked quite well, and it took just 1 week for programming and 1 week for debugging all the stuff. And it worked for like a year, I think. What happened then? We got a lot of small projects, and the Ansible configuration file got really big. Ansible got really slow, and then a newer version of Ansible was stable, and we tried it out, and it failed. It broke apart because it wasn't designed to handle configuration files that large. Like each project is like 100 projects. The Ansible configuration file grows really big. Adding new project was manual, more or less, and we wanted to automate that because we got a new developer dedicated to games, and the rate of new projects increased. Also, somewhere in the middle, the old projects, the legacy projects we needed to support got older and older. So the libraries were outdated. The libraries were updated in a backwards incompatible manner. So we needed to fix the configuration somehow to freeze it. And we put some Docker containers inside this structure, but it mostly remained the same. So we wanted to automate adding of new projects. We wanted to get this mess out of the Ansible configuration files, and we wanted these containers to be the first-class citizen. We wanted to have a repository for this and that. So it's a natural call for a operations engineer to first look out for the industry solutions, because nobody wants to build their own bicycle. Maybe not that really. Maybe everyone wants to build their bicycle, but it's usually a bad thing to do. So there are a lot of good projects out there of the same size and very narrow usability field. Like there are a lot of projects for configuration provisioning, like Chef, Puppet, Ansible, a lot of them. There are a lot of projects aimed at continuous integration, like TeamCity, Jenkins, Circle, GitLab, CI, but you'd need a glue to stitch these two together, and usually a lot of glue. It would be like the program to wrangle these two separate projects with different requirements and different languages. There are also like big projects which aim to solve this issue of building and deploying stuff. And there is HashiCorp stack, there is Kubernetes, there is Mesos, a lot of really good projects, but they're usually very hard to learn, and it looks like over-engineering because they have so much features, most of them are not needed to us. And you remember it's a startup, and it's not that kind of startup which grows quickly. We are rather to be this small team for a long time. So Dmitry is a guy who likes programming actually, and he said like, we won't use any of these industry solutions because it's too expensive and hard to maintain and etc. etc. And said, okay, sell to me. How would it look to build this stuff ourselves? And it turned out the bare requirements are that we need a versioned configuration storage for the whole system. We need to automate, we need some REST API service which will automate adding new projects to this configuration storage. And we need a builder which will listen for webhook, for Git hook events. And we need some mechanism to deliver these build images to the target servers. It might be push or pull. So our solution looks like this. For builder, we use Docker registry. I mean, we store our build artifacts into the Docker registry. We store our storage in a Git repository. And deploy mechanism is agent pool. So on every production server, we have this small agent which pulls from a Git repository each minute. And if it sees any configuration changes, it basically installs this image and this configuration into the target server. So the artifacts are like this is the actual repository we have at the moment with build configuration, list of nodes, build plans, and services used, and some templates for Nginx configuration. And it is interesting that the whole thing is just 3,000 lines of Golang code, very neat and small. And it took like 1.5 months to program the whole thing, to plan it, and then to implement it. And it is used currently in production. So to us, it looks a lot like a bicycle, which shouldn't be invented. But if you're trying to solve an actual problem, you don't have a solution from the industry which is quite close to what you need. And transforming these big projects to your need, it might be a lot more work than just programming your own on a general purpose programming language like Go. That's actually all I wanted to present to you. And now I'm ready for your questions. Tell me how wrong we were to write our own bicycle.
Sorry. How do you think, how much time does it take to set up Jenkins and Kubernetes setup for this stuff?
I think it will be maybe a little less than, okay, let me answer this way. If you have a person who is fluent with Kubernetes and fluent with Jenkins, it might be not that long. But you'll need a person who is familiar with these two systems and ideally had a production experience with these two systems. So it might be easy for a big company to have these two persons in their staff, but for us it was like, okay, we need to hire a Kubernetes person, or we need to invest a lot of time into learning Kubernetes and all the hiccups it has.
Okay.
Did I answer?
Yeah. Well, does this system like supports? Is it like self-healing? Well, what do you do when the container crashes? The game is not working, or what's happening?
That's actually a good question, and consider a service part. Like, what happens if the
yeah, what happens if the service dies? The backend for the service dies.
You have some runner process which has this service up. It might be a systemd or something like that. And usually these service, we have systemd, handles these situations. So we're trying to reuse the operating system interfaces a lot.
Okay, thank you.
Am I correct that your build tool that you write by your own is a swap for, is it only for Jenkins, or it's, maybe I'm not fully understand what the functionality of your solution?
The build tool is very simple, actually. It takes a base image, base Docker image it uses. It's in a config file, and then it pulls code repository of the target project into this image, and then builds this image and sends it to the Docker repository. So it's like 3 steps.
Okay, so am I correct that you're talking about that you don't use Kubernetes or Mesos?
Yeah, that's right. That was a plan, not to use overcomplicated systems for managing like thousands of servers when we have actually.
So you just like we will not use it. We will just use more simpler solution.
Yes, the reason was to keep things simple, and it turns out, funnily enough, that keeping things simple might be just writing your own things.
And how much container do you run?
At the moment, it's like 100 containers.
Oh, okay, got it. Thank you.
It's not thousands, of course.
We had a question here first. My question is, what happens if that one person leaves your company? Do you write your own CI tool again?
That's a good question, too. You know, usually lately there was a funny tweet on the internet about like the average time engineering person spends in IT companies. Maybe you've seen it. It was like in no big IT company it was more than 2 years. In Microsoft it's 1.8. In Facebook it's 1.2 years maybe. So people leave and go to a new company a lot these days. But in our setup in Meduza, it's more like an old Italian business, family business, where you stay for a long time. So currently we have, our project is 3 years old, and no developer have left yet. So it's a low probability situation. And in this if this person leaves, the system is, I know it a little bit, so we have some shared knowledge. It's not just in one head. But we don't plan this for this situation a lot because it's not the high probability cause.
Are there any plans of open sourcing that tool?
Yeah,
making
definitely.
it available to general public?
Actually, it's quite generic. The only thing which is specific to Meduza is the templates for Nginx. So we will be putting this thing on to the open source quite soon. I'm not sure anyone will use it because our situation is quite unique. But if you have a situation like this, you might use this software, actually. Yes.
How do you update those agents on your production servers?
It's actually in Ansible. So you, the things which are not changed, which don't change often are still stay in Ansible. This thing is for managing a lot of small services which change a lot. And we need to maybe migrate all of these services to a new server or to distribute this through 3 or 5 servers.
Mm-hmm. And how do you test the development of those agents?
How do we test development of these agents?
Yeah,
we usually
on a new agent version. How do you test it and then deploy it? Okay, Ansible, that's one script which will just deploy it, but before that, how
that's
do you
true.
make sure that
we have a staging environment where we have a staging environment where we run these things for staging, and there we can update these agents first and see how that works.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? We have 8 minutes left, so feel free to ask your questions.
Where's Dmitry?
I'll ping him now.
Actually, are you supporting Git or something else?
You can take the microphone from that side.
Are your system work only with Git?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, you can hook in Mercurial or something you'd like if you'd want to, but I don't see any point in that.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, currently we use Bitbucket and GitHub, and we support webhooks for both these systems, but I don't see any point in adding more version control systems at the moment. Do you use something else? Like CVS? SVN? That's true. I think it would be quite easy to add this support. That's true. No, it's quite fine to use SVN, of course.
So I have another one, just to clarify. So does your agent actually pulls Docker images from Hub, or does it like look at changes that are in some Git repository and then pulls that repository?
First, agent gets changes for a configuration from a Git repository. And then if there is a change, usually in this change there will be a link to a specific image in our private Docker repository. And then this agent will pull this image and deploy it by the rules.
And how do you build those images? Do you use some sort of CI, or
we have a small builder application which runs on a specific server and builds everything upon a webhook.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone? We have some time left. No more questions?
And if a bus hits your developer?
Sorry?
And the developer won't leave the company, but if a bus hits him?
If a bus hits the developer on the street.
The bus factor is quite low. That is an issue, of course. It is an issue. But as I've said before, it's an unlikely event. I know the whole purpose of this conference and operations is to plan for these unlikely events, for black swans and etc. But it's about compromise, right? You need to, you can build a system which is 100% failure-free, but that will be a rocket science and that will cost a lot. So you need to find this middle ground where it's cheap and functional enough. So ours is there, maybe closer to the cheap part.
how often do you have improvements or updates of your solution?
Excuse me, could you?
Right here.
How often we change the software, right?
Yeah, how often do you improve or update or change? Or new
This
features?
version is quite new. The old version lived for a year, and it was updated somewhere after 6 months after first development. We adopted containers for our services, and then it was like 1 year with this software. So it's updated like every year, I think, maybe 6 months max. So because most of the time this engineer spends his time tuning our CDN and other services.
Clear, thank you.
Do we have time?
Yes,
we do.
And then there is one more question there.
Yesterday in open
No?
discussions,
Nah?
yesterday in open discussions we had like talking about Docker, about its stability, and I heard a lot of scary stories how it's not working with the storage, dropping network, how the tools are not removing images correctly. What is your experience on
Yeah,
working?
it doesn't remove images correctly. that's correct.
But still, you're using it in production for.
Yeah, we do use this Docker for production, which is not. I think it's getting more and more usual for companies these days. It's not yet that rock stable, but it works. I mean, it's the best we have, and we are all about compromising, as you've heard before.
Yeah, we had a question back.
No.
No.
That was wrong. False. Start.
3 minutes. We have 3 more minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. What else have you invented?
I'll save this for a next talk. Actually, we have a CDN, you know. Yes,
What operation system you support?
At the moment, it's just Linux because
Linux?
we run. Actually, we have one macOS server for building our iOS apps, and that was written in Bash. I mean,
Oh. Did your system support, let's say, master agent concept?
yeah, of course, that's like agents are slaves, and this server is
Okay.
master.
Are you planning to add Windows support?
Sorry.
Windows support.
Windows support, I don't think so, because we don't have much Windows apps. We have a client-side Windows app, and we have a dedicated machine to build this image, to build that software, but then it's distributed to the clients through the App Store. I mean, Microsoft Store.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a lot of time. A lot of time. I've never seen this long Q&A. Oh, I feel we have a big one coming.
So you see, there's a joke. My father is afraid of Santa Claus. Every time Santa Claus comes, he leaves. So this is why I'm forced to repeat the question where Dmitry is. I have a colleague with exactly the same name. I congratulated him that he's a speaker on the conference. He laughed at me and said, "You see the image on the page where DZ is." Yeah, everybody saw that. Every speaker has a photo on the page.
Okay.
And Dmitry doesn't have a photo there, right? There are only.
I do believe on a web page of the talk there are 2 photos.
No. Almost every speaker has the photo there, but Dmitry Zakharov hadn't
He's a
the photo.
privacy-centered guy, you know.
Right. So I still feel myself as that child in that joke with Santa Claus. Okay. So I still have no proof that this is a different
that he
person.
exists.
Yeah. So I have to repeat. Where's Dmitry? You promised he will come to the Q&A session.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I just said that they are not letting him go anywhere because of the buzz factor and because he can go to an interview to a different company.
Thank you. Anyone? Does anyone wants to provide some questions or more humor? Okay, I suppose if no questions for now, of course, hopefully Samat will be available during breaks and lunch and dinner possibly. And yeah, big thanks to him. Big round of applause.